Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of video games. We cover all kinds from the mainstream to the indie, so I hope you enjoy your stay, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. In XIV, a member of the Radiant host is panicking a little bit because while he was patrolling the city, he saw a voidsent. He caught up to it and was going to deal with it, but it was acting really weird. It didn't try to fight him or run, it just sat there and stared at him, so he decided that it might be better to capture it. Since you know way more about voidsent than he does, he figures you'll be able to figure out why the thing is acting weird. A strange voidsent being loose in the world is one of those problems that are actually worth bringing the Warrior of Light into, so she goes with the guard to see this strange critter. The voidsent is a tiny hecti that starts talking as soon as it sees you. It saw you at Troya Castle on the 13th and it needs your help with something. It would have asked the soldier that found it, but its lack of a mouth makes talking a little difficult. The Warrior of Light having the echo, which gives her the ability to understand most forms of communication, removes that little inconvenience. When you attacked the castle, this particular voidsent died. When he came back to life, he decided he'd had enough of fighting, so he went through your portal and came to the source. Since he'd only just come back to life, he wasn't exactly fully whole, so when he popped out of the portal, he was broken into a few sundered versions of himself, all of which the guards you left around the portal apparently missed. The different versions of the voidsent ran off, and the primary one, the one you're talking to, followed them to XIV. Since he's small, it was easy for him to avoid being seen, mostly. Unfortunately, he and all the other voidsent that had been absorbed into him were pretty weak, which is the reason why they had decided to combine their essences in the first place, so tracking them down as he isn't exactly easy. He wants to make a deal with you, one where you go off and find his other pieces, and in exchange he'll tell you all the memories he still has from when he was immortal. He wants that life back, and he promises not to eat anyone even after you've made him whole. Getting knowledge about the rulers of the void in exchange for helping restore a single voidsent is more than a good deal, especially since voidsent hold to their end of bargains a lot better than most mortals do. Even the guard thinks it's a good idea, so you head out to find the voidsent shards while the guard lets his bosses know what's going on so they won't panic and murder the voidsent. The voidsent shards aren't exactly hard to find. There are 4 of them and they're not exactly hiding. They're interested in mortals, so they are watching various people go through their day-to-day routines. One is watching a pair of soldiers talk, which reminds him of how there were a lot of soldiers on his world during the Contra Memoria. He remembers one particular incident during the war where a powerful Eidolon had been summoned to attack a fortress. The fortress had been filled with regular soldiers, but they fought hard, hoping to hold off until the Memoriat could get there and deal with the Eidolon. Unfortunately, their savior didn't get there in time. After he killed the Eidolon, he saw that it had killed everyone in the fortress, all except for the garrison's commander. The Memoriat and his servant weren't exactly happy to see the man alive when they saw that he didn't have a single scratch on him. The commander had hid while he let his men die, when it's the duty of the leader to put the lives of his men before his own. The man's lack of understanding his duty makes the Memoriat stab him until he passes out and buries him along with all of his dead men. They decide to let fate choose whether or not he lives. When people were holding the funeral, the commander finally clawed his way out of the grave. The people thought he was a demon, and based on how disfigured and horrible he looked, the people started calling him Scarmiglione. This particular piece of the voidsent was obviously the Memoriat's servant before his transformation, and he had thought they had buried Scarmiglione so deep that he wouldn't have been able to survive, but apparently his will to live was stronger than they thought. With his story concluded, he goes off to join his other pieces, while you track down another one. This shard is watching people eat, so he tells you about how voidsent get stronger. It all depends on the quality and quantity of the ether that they consume. When the world was consumed by darkness, the Memoriats became very powerful voidsent, but the majority of people just became regular creatures. There were some exceptions, and there's one that this shard remembers well, Scarmiglione. The creature was powerful, but he was also a coward. Even when he was on the brink of starving to death, he would only go after creatures far weaker than he was. Anything he thought might put up a fight caused him to run away, but one day he got cornered. Golbez saw him running like a coward and he was curious, so he asked him why. When Scarmiglione claimed it was only because he was weak, Golbez decided to give him a bit of ether. Feeling confident with his gifted power, Scarmiglione kills the creature that was hunting him, only for Golbez to say that he had hardly given the Void Scent any power at all. He already had more power than he thought. Because he was such a coward, he hadn't realized just how strong he was, an issue that Golbez would solve if the Void Scent joined him. Scarmiglione agrees, probably because he thought Golbez might eat him if he didn't. The little Void Scent thinks that Scarmiglione is still out there somewhere, and likely a lot stronger now. He doesn't realize that the Archfiend is sitting snugly in your pocket, but he's done his part, so he heads back to the others while you go looking for the remaining 2 Void Scent. The third shard had planned on finding the others, but he had gotten sidetracked watching a couple argue. Mostly the man is irritated that his girlfriend asks her father's permission before she does anything, which is the right way to be. Only a fool doesn't get advice from people who they know have their best interests at heart. I'm 35 and I still talk to my parents about stuff. Their interaction reminds him of a girl who was not born into a particularly loving family. Her parents were criminals who ended up being labeled as nobles. The girl was raised to be royalty with servants and riches, but she had no freedom. Her parents controlled everything from what she did to what she said. Wanting to experience at least a little bit of freedom, she got her handmaiden to help her sneak out of the house. Her dad caught her and locked her door and barred her window so she couldn't sneak off again. With help, she snuck out one more time, hoping to meet with friends, but her dad found out and killed her friends so they wouldn't cause any more problems. He plans on using his daughter to gain influence, and he won't have her ruin that. But she has other plans, and she takes an axe and goes full Michael Myers on her dad. With nothing stopping her, she left and discovered that her true calling was battle. She was a beautiful savage, and she decided to take a new name, Barbarisha. The last shard is on the airship landing, wishing that he could fly, but it's not in most Void Scent's nature to do a lot of traveling. The strongest of them make domains that they stay in, while the weaker ones try to stay on their good side. The masters of the domains rarely leave since they're at their strongest on their home turf, but Barbarisha, like when she was a mortal, hated being confined to one place. When she first made her domain, she sat around waiting for her minions to bring her food, all for the purpose of keeping her hair beautiful, but the resources of her domain were limited, and eventually she consumed her own servants, turning the place into a lonely prison. She didn't know what to do since she didn't have the strength to leave her domain, but Golbez showed up and gave her ether. With her newfound power, she took control of the wind and used it to move her domain, something that impressed even Golbez, which caused him to give her more power and bring her into his service. The little Void Scent would have had more to tell you about her if he hadn't accidentally fallen out of Barbarisha's domain. With the 4 shards found, the Void Scent goes to combine and go back to his original form, but it turns out that there are still more pieces missing. Unfortunately, he can't even sense them, which means there's more searching to be done later, and more for you to learn about the Archfiends. While everyone else is doing what they can to prep for the next trip into the Void, the Warrior of Light heads to Razat Han to check up on the guard who was watching out for the weird Void Scent that had split into pieces when it made its way to the source. The creature still doesn't seem like it's all that dangerous, but the fact that some of its pieces are still missing has the guard a little worried. He knows that the other pieces are somewhere in the city, but no one's been able to get a lead on them. He also can't understand what the thing is saying, so that doesn't help all that much either. As luck would have it, the Void Scent senses the rest of its pieces nearby when the Warrior of Light arrives. There's 4 of them, and just like before, if the Warrior of Light tracks them down, they'll tell her stories about the strong Void Scent that they've seen. It's just as good of a deal as it was the last time, so the Warrior of Light heads off to find them. She finds the first one near some water. Apparently it had liked how the water looked and decided to take a little dip in it, but with it being the size of a grapefruit with no arms or legs, it kinda got washed downstream. It got tossed aside when it got fished up by a not too happy fisherman, and then you came along. The Void Scent thinks it's had enough adventure for a lifetime and is ready to head back to the other pieces, but it owes you a story, so it tells you a tale about 2 fisherman brothers, one of them being him. He used to fish a lot with his brother, but the Contra Memoria messed up the ocean's ether and most of the fish died. It became a struggle for them to survive, and his brother finally got sick of the whole thing. He was bored with the repetitive nature of his life and had just decided to head off and join the war for no other reason than he wanted something to do. And apparently all of that fishing made him really strong, which I don't understand, but we're gonna just go with it. He would charge into battle barehanded and beat the crap out of anybody, no matter what side they fought for. As long as they were alive and pretty strong, he wanted to fight them, and that was the only thing that made him feel alive. His brother heard rumors about the strange man who would show up on the battlefield and fight anyone still standing before leaving, which is how he knew that his brother still lived, and the people who talked about him called him Cagnazo. Cagnazo's brother thinks that the best thing that happened to him was he became a void scent, and he hopes that his brother managed to find what he was looking for. With finding the next piece, the Warrior of Light gets to hear the next part of the story. Cagnazo as a void scent was the only one who did things in reverse. Where other void scent hunted weaker creatures for food, Cagnazo would go after anyone that he thought was stronger than he was. He would set traps for them and drown them, and one after another the strongest void scent were beaten by him. And that still wasn't enough to make him happy. He didn't know what it was that he wanted, not until he met Golbez. The big armored void scent stepped into his domain, and after he survived Cagnazo's first attack, the void scent knew who Golbez was. Word had spread that the man was going around looking for really strong void scent, and Cagnazo is more than willing to give him a fight. He misread Golbez's intentions, however. The man doesn't go around fighting strong people for the sake of it. He is curious about why Cagnazo does it, because he knows it's not because the creature is hungry. He proves that by giving him a lot of very pure ether that only satisfies his hunger for just a moment. It's because what Cagnazo's hungering for is a real battle, and he'll only get that if he can find foes who can really push him to his limits. Golbez promises that if he joins him, he'll never run out of strong opponents, and that's how Cagnazo joined forces with Golbez. With that story done, the Warrior of Light hunts down the third void scent fragment, and it tells her about the day that her mother died in the Contra Memoria, and about the people who put her down. Way back in the day, there were two powerful mages who spent their time training at the top of Mount Ordeals. One day some monsters started attacking nearby villages, so the two mages decided that they'd use their powers to save the world. They left the mountain and started killing the creatures, but when a little girl screams at one of the mages not to kill her mother, he hesitates and gets himself killed. The other mage uses his powers to seal the void scent woman away in a crystal before she can kill the little girl. Seeing how he had failed to save the woman and lost his friend in the process, he realizes that his claim that he was going to save the world was nothing but talk. Because of how red his face was when he got angry at himself, the little girl named him Rubicante, which isn't bad when you compare it to a lot of the other nicknames children have given to people. Rubicante took his fallen friend back up the mountain and buried him there, then he continued training alone. One day the little girl left the crystal that her mother had become on the grave as a sign of gratitude to Rubicante for saving her. That one little act made him leave the mountain again and head out into the world to try and do some good. The last void scent piece tells the Warrior of Light of how Rubicante ended up working for Golbez. He spent his time as a void scent keeping a beacon fire lit, which didn't really serve a purpose since void scent don't need light to see, but Rubicante did it anyway. And because he did it despite being mocked by other void scent, the little void scent ended up helping him keep the fire lit. Whenever it would go out, he would let Rubicante know, and the void scent would come by and restart the fire. He did this over and over until the day that Golbez showed up. Even Golbez can feel how powerful Rubicante is, but he can't understand why the void scent is wasting that power to keep that fire lit. Even Rubicante doesn't know why he's doing it, but he knows that seeing the flames puts him at peace. He didn't have enough power to fully understand his own feelings, so Golbez tosses him a bit of pure ether, and that lets Rubicante understand what he liked about the fire. It reminded him of the sun. Even though the sun was gone from the void, Rubicante was trying to recreate it with his magic. Golbez wants to restore the world to how it was before as well, and since Rubicante wants the same thing, he joins him. But saving the world will come at the price of killing everyone on the source. To save his own world, Rubicante was more than willing to have the death of another world's people on his conscience. Being on the source, the little void scent understands why Rubicante was willing to kill everyone to experience that again. Now with the last void scent piece recovered, the creature recombines into its full form, which is both more ugly and more dangerous than it was before. But there's no way to send it back to the 13th at the moment, so the question is what to do with it. It turns out the creature can sense other void scent really far away, which would be a very useful ability to have, and since it wants to stay on the source, it's more than willing to make a pact with the soldiers of Razad-Han to do just that. This concludes the story of the Archfiends. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and if you really want to show your support, you can donate to the channel through the link in the description. Until next time guys, later.